Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is another edition of the MSP Initiative. MSP Talk. Today is July 23rd, 2024. We've been off for a week. We've been bouncing around the planet, preparing for things on the other side of the year here, which we'll talk about like literally right now, because the year is going to quickly speed up on us, and we'll be in like the thick of what we like to call conference season in IT MSP land. So without further ado, some housekeeping. MSPinitiative.com. This is where we pretty much like to park most of the things that we do. So, like, for example, this session is being recorded, and you will find our podcast, YouTube, video, audio versions of all of these sessions under sessions on the MSPinitiative.com website, including our YouTube page and our podcatcher. Like, subscribe, forward, download, all that good stuff. It is all there. MSP Community Minds. We did one of these in Nashville early in the year. Actually, our inaugural one was last year in Denver, and we are coming back to Denver at the end of September, September 25th and 26th, actually. This is 2 days absolutely jam-packed with real, actual educational content. You'll see the schedules posted, and all of our MSP panelists, that's right, people like you have figured things out that maybe you haven't. Why not hear from the people who are actually doing the work, not the people who are going to imagine what your work is and then tell you what they don't know? And then we have workshops with other industry experts who are going to spend a couple of hours with you at a time and actually work through something rather than pitch you on an idea and ask for a credit card swipe at the end and you actually got nothing other than a commercial. So check out MSP Community Minds. Now, there's a lot of people in the sandbox that are trying to shift the direction of events. We are just one of the many, and this is our effort to help bring actual, real, legitimate information that can help you shift, change, adjust, or maybe you just walk away from this knowing that you're doing everything right. I don't know about that, but we'll see. There's always room to improve. Then we have the remaining MSP community block parties for the year. We've got a couple coming up literally around the corner. IT Nation Australia. So if you're going to be in Sydney at the end of August, we're working with the ConnectWise team. We are holding our event on the beginning night of the IT Nation conference in Sydney. So check out the, which will be the 21st, by the way, August 21st. You can register ahead of time now, whether you're an MSP or anyone but an MSP. You can see there's registration pages there. Thank you to a bunch of our sponsors. There's more coming, but that is around the corner. Then we go right into machine gun conference season. We're working with the Datto Kaseya team. We'll be doing a block party in conjunction with DattoCon Miami, second night of that event. So go ahead, and that'll be October 29th, by the way, in South Beach. So check that out. We are working, we'll actually be on site with the Kaseya DattoCon team, so you don't have to even get too far off the property there. And then we were just there last week checking out some venues for you. We're headed to Germany, Berlin, Germany, that is, with our friends from PAX 8. So if you're headed to PAX 8 Beyond Germany, we'll be working with them again to do one for the first time in a new country. So have some cool and exciting options that we look through. I think everybody likes the beer concept, so don't worry, we'll have something really good for you there. Then we turn right back around, and these are a little bit out of order, but we'll be going to ConnectWise IT Nation again for the, I don't know, 8th year in a row. And we'll be bringing some sort of musical entertainment. We've already gotten some votes from you guys on social media. Thank you for helping us kind of chart our course a little bit. And we'll be hopefully announcing our radio recognizable band like we do every year, third time in a row. First, it was All American Rejects. Then it was the combination of Better Than Ezra, Sugar Ray, and Tonic. Who for this year? Stay tuned. And then a week later, we'll be headed finally to close out the year back to Sydney, almost like, you know, where we started for Kaseya DattoCon Australia, which will be November 12th to the 13th there in Australia. So that's a lot of things to do in a small period of time. You can find all of the stuff I just went through, including where to register ahead of time under community block parties on MSPinitiative.com. And by the way, just a reminder, if you're an MSP, it costs you absolutely nothing. Yeah, this is for you, right? Celebrate the community. So how about a hookup there, right? I mean, that's what these are. community offers are listed. If you can take advantage of them, great, on the webpage. And then lastly, industry calendar, which takes us for the last 6 months of the year, all the way until December. You can check out all the stuff going on there. And that is the housekeeping at mspinitiative.com. Well, this is not a stranger to MSP Initiative. This person's been around since the early days of even the concept of what MSP Initiative was. And I believe he, has thousands of miles logged on a tour bus or one of many tour buses around the country with us. Welcoming him back. Good friend, Paul Redding. How you doing today, Paul?
Doing well, George. Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
It's been a minute. I'm just having like flashbacks of all of those bus stops, including the ones where we left people on the side of the road by accident.
I still wish I had been on the one with Ken, where he ended up getting poured on in the pouring rain. I wish I'd seen that one. That was, if you recall, that was the one where I was too smart to ride with you guys. That was the first time I just said, no, I'm not riding from Denver to Phoenix. I got off and got on a plane, flew by myself in first class because of COVID, right? Like, had a mask on. I was the only person up front. You guys were leaving Kim Patterson on the side of the road to die somewhere in the desert.
I mean, we did eventually get him. I mean, he wasn't completely stranded, but for a minute there, he got a little wet. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Then there was another stop where everybody got stranded, except for
that's right. It was you, me, Alec, Ken, like all of us. Pete, everybody got stuck.
I'll tell you what, it may never, knock on everything. Let's hope we never have another pandemic in our lifetime. But that may have been a one in a lifetime experience. I think
I hope so. Yes, I hope so. There were positives and negatives, but it was definitely something that I'm glad we did it though. I will tell you this. It's funny, man. Years later, you look back on it and laugh. We have lots of great stories to tell, but people still bring it up. People still talk. Like you'll run into people and they're like, "Wait, I know where I know you. You were running around in the pandemic in a bus." I'm like, "Yep, that was us." So I mean, I think it was, and something else, man, is when you talk about a once in a lifetime experience. Now you travel even more than I do, right? Like you guys are going all over the world, but you see the whole world and the country and everything from an airplane.
Yeah.
You really think about it, like 99% of the time, it's the destination that you see, nothing along the journey, unless you're that one jackass on the plane that's got to leave the window open at 6 a.m. You see nothing the whole way, right? It was different seeing the whole country from a bus. Like just all across the country. We saw, I mean,
there's
if you think about it, just about every market.
Yeah, there's cool areas of the country that are flyover for sure.
Yeah. It was definitely neat. So where is the next place? I assume we'll see you in Atlanta next week.
I think Alex actually headed down there, so you see him down there. He's actually the topic of the day, we should not skip over. He's in the middle of trying to get himself down to Dallas right now for RoarCon. But apparently, the one airline that apparently is discombobulated while everybody else seems to be, I don't know, okay, is Mr. Delta. Mr. Delta, all sorts of jacked up. And I'm like, why? Like Spirit Airlines never stopped. Southwest is still running. Frontier's, on time. Why is Delta jammed? I guess.
To be fair, the three you just named are like that meme I sent you the other day. They're running on like a Commodore 64 sitting in a basement somewhere.
So, hey, Windows 3.1 and Windows 95. You know what? For all the crap Southwest got like 6 months ago, they sure as hell looking at everybody now saying, "What's up, man? What's going on?"
Right. You know what's crazy? It's got to be some weird conspiracy though that 80% of the channel was like home during the worst of this. You know what I mean? Like it's of all the people we know that travel for a living, I know very few folks right now that are actually stranded somewhere. Whereas, I mean, what are the odds that you, me, Alec, like, we're all sitting at the house watching this happen on the news?
Well, in all fairness, I was in Dublin. So I was
That's right.
I did Berlin, London, Dublin, home in like 5 days, typical George. And I was in my last leg. I was at a PAX 8 thing in Dublin. I was taking, their version of Cheapo Air, Aer Lingus, which, pretty much is their version of Frontier. That's my equivalent. And like, we were starting to get all these notifications. Like I started seeing all these news articles popping up. I'm like, what's going on here? Everything's running on time. All right, cool. get to London, you're going in between terminals, and like security guys like, gotta hit the check in with United desk. I was like, okay, go to United desk. They're like, have you checked in already? I'm like, yeah, I got a boarding pass. Everything's okay. That's good. Because if you didn't have a boarding pass, you'd have a problem. I'm like, oh, he's like, yeah, we'd have to hand write you one. I was like, what? I was like, okay, well, here it is. They're like, all right, go ahead, keep going. So when I get to the gate is when they're like, all right, there's delays, right? Because the planes in front of my plane were backed up. And then at the end of the day, it was like a 2-hour delay, which wasn't horrible. But
No.
you're watching every news screen. At that point, BBC was what they were running in the airport. Surprise, surprise. And they were just like going from country to country to country to country to country to country, And like all of a sudden, a company that we've heard of for a long time, right? Because we're in the sandbox and technology land, but like from a everyday, just say call it a traveler, person sitting at home, person turning on the news, they would never have known what the word CrowdStrike meant.
Right.
And now they do.
Yeah.
And like think about how much airtime that word got in 24 hours.
And now the CEO's got to testify in front of Congress.
I mean,
I just saw that today. Like they've already called him in.
Like, not surprised, you took down the entire travel industry. You took down like government agencies, like you took down mega companies all at the same time. It was like 8.5 million devices at once.
So I'm flying to Phoenix with my family on I guess Thursday this week, and we're hoping that it's all clear. We're just because me, Delta guy. I'm waiting patiently for Delta to get it together. Now I can't see. I can see my reservation, but I can't see theirs, and I can't make any changes or see seats or any of that stuff. Like that's all in Never Neverland. But I have a reservation, and it doesn't say delayed.
Well, I would say, you connect with your buddy Mr. Stanners, the other Mr. Delta, and he'll tell you that I think his flight for next week in Atlanta is also Delta, and that he thinks that's already in trouble. So I don't know.
Really?
All I can tell you is I don't know why every other airline seems to be, pretty much running more or less okay, but not Delta. Delta seems to be in the quicksand.
So what I read is that they Delta lost the system that handles their people, like the actual staffing as well as the planes. So once the planes are back up, now they can't find their people. Then nobody knows where anybody is. But yeah, big mess. I'm crossing my fingers that we're getting out of here. My son's supposed to be competing in like worlds for taekwondo, and
wow,
it would be a real bummer if none of us can make it.
Well, can we go back to the line, right? Like nobody ever gets fired with going with the big man on the block. Like at one point that was like, hey, like I remember one deal I was working on. They're like, oh, well, we're going with Cisco. I'm like, it's 40% higher. And they're like, oh, but we never get fired for going Cisco. And I'm like, okay, but like, this is the inverse. You went with the big guy. You went with the Yankees, and you got hurt because of it.
Nobody wants to ambulance chase, right? And therefore, I think most vendors are that are in that security space are being really careful about what they say. And I think CrowdStrike, you and I both know, it's a fabulous product. It's been around for a long time. They're definitely one of the top ends of the security world. But I mean, dude, if it's what everybody says, it sounds like you had what is it really an unpaid intern that pushed an update? I mean, it's at a certain point, there's got to be a check and balance here, and something was missing. And I'm pretty sure once they get in front of Congress, we're all going to find out what that was. But I mean, I mean, look, you still have an MSP. I was an MSP. I can't tell you how many times somebody broke something with an update. Now imagine like what happened with a bad Outlook update on this kind of a scale. That was a bad morning at CrowdStrike.
But
Just
like,
think
about the worst possible day as an IT service provider MSP. It's pretty much it. Like every customer being affected at one time, you don't have enough resources, and it's one of those things where unless you were proactive and had some sort of lights out management or ILO or DRAC or some sort of BIOS or motherboard based remote access control to these machines, you would have to touch every single machine.
Yep.
Like, could you think about the larger guys, right? The multi-state roll-up, venture-backed, PE-backed MSPs that have like 27 states, 15,000 machine. Like, how do you even like? Does it take you a month to get to all those?
Have you seen? Is that going to be the permanent answer? Is that everyone's going to be physically touched?
I'm basically
Oh,
so
what a
like now like Microsoft since come out and they've given you like something you can load onto a USB or whatever, and
right.
like, but still like that's the worst case scenario, right? And like if
Mm,
you go back to your MSP day, Paul, MSP days, Paul, that's the one that says, do I still want to do this? Like that's the one that gets you up and says, this is not an easy business.
no, and in the case of all the partners out there, uh, again, it's a great solution. You made a wise choice. It's the big guy. Nobody gets fired for it, but you put this there. This is your tool. This is the thing that you talk about. This is why you go to your customer. Remember how you explain to them all the risks involved in not having advanced cybersecurity tools, and then advanced cybersecurity tools shut everything down. I can't imagine the conversation you're having to have, especially with the older demographic of business owner, the guy that's 55, 60 years old, that's run the business forever, didn't used to have to pay for IT. You just got him over this hump and you're having that conversation now. That's a brutal week, man. It's a brutal week. I feel for
And
everybody.
there is, I mean, listen, we're not that far out of this and it's still going on, but there's a conversation then, right? Like your end customer didn't buy CrowdStrike. You bundle CrowdStrike with your package of services to your customer.
Yep.
So if the customer now says, who's going to make me right? Who is that?
Right.
Argument could be it's you. So that's not a very comfortable place to be in.
No, I
Like
agree.
the
It's
counter argument is, well, hey, when the cloud is down and the internet's down, it's not my problem. Amazon's down, everybody's down. Okay, cool, but like you like they didn't even know who CrowdStrike was. You just you recommended it. Like you put it in there. Somebody told me, I don't know if this is true, that CrowdStrike's MSA was like, oh, we'll only reimburse you up to 1 month of your bill to us or whatever, right? Like whatever that is. Can't imagine that's going to cover Delta for a week.
I saw something, I don't know if it's true. I saw something earlier that said Delta right now has lost $163 million and counting.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I
163 million.
mean,
It's got to be. I mean, by the time this is done, if Alex really worried about next Monday and he knows something, I mean, like, man, you're talking a week of this.
mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I mean, how much do they have to refund? Just that. And then, people that never fly Delta again because of it. And again, the bad part is Delta being that. Why do we use Delta? Because, man, they're a top end company. They go with the best. So they go. I bet they're all Cisco shop too, right? Like I bet their network is 100% Cisco all the way through. Only the best for Delta. But here we sit. I guess
Pete,
there's a lesson there, right? It
look
can
at that.
happen to anybody.
Another bus goer. Pete pops in. He says, "Do you see how Microsoft is saying that the EU made them keep the kernel open due to antitrust? Had they not done that, the kernel would have been locked down. Now the EU is chasing Apple because of the Microsoft issue. So Apple wasn't affected because of this issue. I'm not sure if I follow all of that." And he says Delta has canceled 5.5 thousand flights. Jesus. Well, here's what I can say. There's going to be finger pointing. There's going to be an investigation. I'm sure a class action lawsuit's already been drafted somewhere. But from an IT industry standpoint, the biggest global single outage recognizable in everybody's cell phone news and every, kitchen and living room, right? Like that's a bad one. This one's going to stick for a while. Like people are going to remember this one. And so now you're going to say, was IT service provider MSP, like I'm not Microsoft, I'm not CrowdStrike, I'm not Amazon, don't look at me, but like you got stuck in the middle of that. And like, okay, he just posted a link. EU rules may have indirectly amplified recent outage. Got it. I'll read through this in a second. Thanks, Pete. But anyway, nobody's covering your overtime.
No.
Like you actually got I call it a shit sandwich, right? You got the big guy pushing down on you from upstairs. You got your customer pushing up from downstairs, and then you're in between. So not only did you have to put all this additional time, effort, money out in order to remediate, which you're still probably in the middle of doing in some cases. Now your customer's pointing the gun at you saying,
Yep.
"Sup? Let's have that conversation now." And you're just like, "Did you see the news?" Like,
And what do you say? All you can say is, I mean, it got everybody. Like, I mean, it got everybody using CrowdStrike. But then, like I said, they don't understand why you chose this product to begin with. So now it becomes you made a bad decision. But you and I both know you didn't. It could happen to anybody. I mean, and here's the reality: it could happen to Microsoft any day. I mean, Microsoft's the biggest one, right? And when it finally happens, are we going to, yell at all of our service providers for putting us in Windows?
Usually what happens, Paul, and like I know this is so cliche, but for everybody listening, I know you're gonna roll your eyes in the back of your head. It's like, well, if it's Microsoft being down, then it's Microsoft. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
Everybody else, like the world is ending, switch now. But if it's Microsoft, it's Amazon.
It's Amazon, it's Microsoft. Well, it's Amazon, it's Microsoft. It's Google.
Like which interestingly enough, because I was in a 5 hours ahead time zone, Microsoft had like a massive Azure outage, like 6 hours going into this CrowdStrike thing before. And so immediately all the marketing was Microsoft. And then all of a sudden it was like CrowdStrike. And like it took a hard turn. And I was just like, huh, are those two things connected? They're saying no. Okay. I was like, that was two back-to-back things. So like I can imagine Microsoft, somebody at Microsoft in the C-suite is probably like,
right.
right? Like from a marketing PR standpoint, they really weren't affected. But like, I'm not a finance guy, but if I pull up CrowdStrike stock ticker, I'm sure it didn't go up, it went down.
Oh man. I mean, and this is going to impact them for a long time. This is one of those things where, to your point in the beginning of the conversation, the average person had no idea what that brand was. You and I know them. They're the one with the 50-foot tall GI Joe at all the shows, right?
Huge,
huge, massive. Which that thing is badass. By the way, I have to give full credit for the 50-foot GI Joe. But now they are synonymous with the outage. Now their name is mud as far as the average consumer. And there's people sleeping on the floor in an airline right now, an airport right now, that hate CrowdStrike with everything in their soul. And they had no idea who they were, as of last week. It's you sometimes being the biggest guy in the room can be, a good thing, and sometimes it can be a bad thing. Sometimes choosing that top brand product. But listen, I mean, I think the thing that's going to be tough that the MSP's got to get around is you're going to have this conversation with the client. And there's going to be a very real, kind of come to Jesus moment here where it's like, man, nothing is perfect. This is why, let's face it. Look, hopefully you had really good backups. Hopefully you were using quick restore products and you could get in there and get your systems back up, right? Like hopefully you took your image last night and you just shot it back up without it. But that's not everybody.
And I hope that you're like, we're a fan of Brad Gross as one of the legal minds in our space, but I hope your MSA is very well written. Like, you shouldn't be taking liability for Microsoft, for CrowdStrike, for Amazon, right? Like, you shouldn't, and you can't afford to, right? Like, you should understand that all of the vendors and like the, I don't know, 40 of them, however many it ends up being, that you bundle into your service, like you should be making it clear to your end customer, like, I'm not rebranding Microsoft 365. That's Microsoft. And by the way, even though I'm invoicing you for what Microsoft's saying that you're using, their terms of service are here, right? Like, I'm not going to get in the middle of Microsoft and you, right? Kind of thing. And unfortunately, like, if you didn't have that set up properly and have your documentation proper and make sure your agreement's spelled out proper, like, you might be in trouble. And I hope you're not, but like, and I hope that there's some reasonableness and like a common sense conversation somewhere in all of it. But like, we're in a day and age where like somebody can sue because the coffee was too hot, right? Like,
well, the thing about it though that's really damning is that if you think about it, all the way from the top down though, there's just a cascade of hold harmless. Nobody accepts responsibility for this. There's nowhere along that supply chain in which anybody says, hey, by the way, if this shit doesn't work, like, I got you, right? Nobody has that. And so if you start at Microsoft down to the tools that are used to secure it, to back it up, to make it communicate with other things, the API connections, all of the vendors in the way and the ones that you work for. I guarantee you, if I read yours, you've got to hold harmless in your vendor contracts, right? So at the end of the day, when you take a look at it, there's nobody willing to hold this hot potato. It's what's wrong with cyber liability insurance. It's why so few of the claims get paid. And it's why you can end up in a mess with something like this. Matt Lee talks about it all the time. You know, steal his thunder. Matt says it all the time. One of the biggest problems we have is it's just an endless cascade of hold harmless. So finally, when it gets down to the consumer, if all the contracts are written right, there's nobody to sue.
Well, it's very interesting you say that because a lot of people are like, oh, go put a claim in with your cyber liability or your business liability insurance. And they're like, it's not a cyber event.
Mm.
Like we don't categorize this as an event, an
Yeah,
incident.
it's not a catastrophe. It's a bad update. You're gonna fix it. Take a stick, plug it in, redo that. Yeah, but I have 1,000 computers I have to do that with. Well, I'm glad you have such a large business. We're gonna raise your insurance premium next year. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the Wild West when you get to that stuff. If when you look at what's going on with cyber liability insurance now, it's unlike insurance for anything else in the world. Look, if I have a car and I get an insurance policy on the car, it is extremely clear under what circumstances that company is going to pay me. It is extremely clear how much they have to pay me, what my terms are, what my liability is. All that is like written and set in stone. It's not that way with cyber liability insurance. They kind of get to write their own. It's not regulated in the same way. You don't have consensus over what's supposed to be in these policies. So now this comes out to, you know, you could have an incident from CrowdStrike. It's not categorized as a cyber liability insurance issue. So can you put it on your business insurance? Was this a catastrophe? I
I
mean,
haven't
where does
talked
this
to
go?
I haven't talked to a business insurance expert yet, but there is the concept of business interruption, right? Like which
Correct.
has a little bit more of a broader, like something that could prevent your day-to-day operations from occurring, right? And like it's not standard. Like you would need to get a separate, like either section, you know, or
Sure.
addendum, additional policy, whatever. But like they do offer such a thing. And maybe that would have covered it. I don't know. But bottom line is it's not stock and standard in every business liability insurance contract.
No, and I would be willing to bet you're right that most of the time cyber liability will not cover this. It's not an incident. This isn't an attack. This isn't a catastrophe. Nothing burned. There was no failure, you know. Bad update.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure this is going to be talked about for a long time, but it is literally like we're still feeling the reverb of this whole thing, and all of those people, right? All of those IT departments, you know, who figured out how to get through this. You know, you'll never get a pat on the back, but
Yep.
there to those people, I think there's an argument to be made that a well functioning, you know, proactive IT team makes or breaks you, right?
Mhm.
Then you have the irony in the whole Windows 95, Windows 3.1, Southwest Airlines story where they're just like, what's going
Yep.
on, guys? How you doing?
I want to say, I want to say it's, don't quote me on this as we're here on your podcast, right? But I want to say it was Alaska Air that had a hack in about 2015, 2016, something like that. And the result of the hack is that they went back to a mainframe and they were on that mainframe for like another decade, you know, like another like 8 years. And I think they may have been off of it now, but you notice they haven't been in the news, so maybe not. But as I recall, their solution was to go back to a mainframe because, you know, you can't hack it.
like
It's not
not
going
to
to happen.
jump industries altogether, but like the entire financial banking industry, at least in this country, United States, runs on AS400,
Yep.
like which is not, it's an ancient technology, but it just runs. And like every bank, every stock trading platform, every like when you get through all the layers of the new stuff, is this like 45-year-old system that's literally running in a data center somewhere, hopefully well powered and air conditioned. And like it literally, it's hard to hack because it's not reachable. Like it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like it just runs.
I'll tell you a true story about that. So when I was an MSP, We had a division of my company that did like smart hands because we carried a bunch of aftermarket warranties for server systems, a bunch of data centers in Memphis back in the day. And IRS data center was here. Hilton had a data center here. But the one I'm talking about was International Paper. And the first time I went there, I had a Hitachi, like the old Hitachi AS400 arrays. I had a Hitachi cert. I was the only guy in Shelby County that had one. So they sent me out to like replace a part on this thing. And I was young. I have no idea how long ago, like probably 20 years ago almost. And I'm talking to the head of storage for International Paper, and I realize how old this particular array is. I mean, this thing was sold new in, I don't know, 98 or something. I mean, this thing's like just ancient, 94. I think it was 92. Anyway, it's freaking ancient then. And this is, now 10 years ago, 15 years, let's say almost 20 years ago. So anyway, I thought it was old as hell. And I asked the guy, I'm like, so, what is the plan to end of life this? When do you upgrade? Like, when does this happen? He's like, there is no end of life. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the world will end before we will turn this off. He's like, International Paper, if it goes out of business, this will be the last machine in the building turned off, and that will be the last light. We have to have this part. We need to get it now. It's like, okay. And that was the first time I ever really experienced what you're talking about, where you start to realize that the big boys, the really big ones, are running on stuff with, green type on the black screen, right? They're going inside computers like 2001 to change hard drives.
I mean, like we laugh about it, right? But like think like JC Penney's, right? With the black screen and the blinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what we're talking about here, right? Like a barcode scanner might work and a keyboard. That's it.
That's it. And a keyboard. That's absolutely. And I'm telling you, I could all day we could go through it. Back then, the FAA had these remote facilities or way out, and you would have to go swap parts in those. Same thing, man. I mean, hard drives that are this big, like big handle on the side, like 56K. But it was
so like we're all in an industry where like things are fast and furious and constantly changing, bleeding edge, all this whatever, and like then you got these guys on the other side saying, nope. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And let's just keep running on what we know works. And you're just like, this past weekend, that's a hard argument to overturn, based on the current situation.
Yeah, I imagine there's somebody right now working at Southwest going, yep, so we'll just be staying on the old Windows 95.
Like, and then like, as you go through all the forums and the Facebook groups and like the Discords and the Reddits and all this, whatever, people are like, well, this is why you should, come back from the cloud, go back to on-prem. And I'm like, I was like, I'm not saying don't have a DR plan. I'm not saying don't have a hybrid approach and not have all your eggs in one basket, but that's a hard reversal based on the last 20 years.
Well, and I mean, look, nothing's perfect, man. So you move it back to your place, and then the building burns down, and you're restoring from a co-location across a Comcast circuit, right? So there's always what is the lesson of constraints, right? Like there's always a constraint somewhere. Nothing will ever be perfect. Now that we've moved to a world where data is the most valuable commodity on the planet, this is the world in which we sit, right? Like now the question becomes, how do you respond to a catastrophe like this? What can Delta, how much do they have to spend to figure out what happens to prevent this in future, or what kind of a failover is there if all your systems lock? What do you do?
I would think less than $200 million.
Yeah. Oh, and like I said, if they were at 163 when we started this conversation, they're at 185 before we get done. You know what I mean? Like this is it's a big hole in the boat that's pouring out right now. You talk about Delta, we talk about the companies, the service providers. Dude, there's a family right now, just like yours and mine, sleeping on the freaking floor in the Atlanta airport that's supposed to be having the time of their lives at Disney World. Now amplify that over and over and over again. There's somebody missing their mom's funeral. You know what I mean? Like this is the kind of thing when you talk about class action lawsuits.
But hold on. I got the answer. Ready? We'll let Chick-fil-A run it. It'll always run.
Hey, well, I'll tell you what, man. If you can come to the Chick-fil-A by my house and take that same approach and figure out what they got going on wrong over here, I would appreciate it. Because you know how it always runs like a machine? Yeah. This one runs like an ant. I don't know how to describe it. Like this one is not a good machine. Not a good
Well,
machine.
that Chick-fil-A by me definitely runs like a machine. They know what I'm there, and it's all fun and games, and we while I'm sitting there, we're just talking life as my chicken's coming out, and all smiles and off and away. So they got it right. But I'll tell you what, lessons to be learned. Security providers are just like everyone else, and human beings are in the middle of all of it, and I know there will be scrutiny for it. Just like, hey, like we've talked about supply chain hacks and all this whatever before, but this wasn't a hack. This was just a straight up goof defect. Is what they said it was.
Well, and you talk about that, and this is not to say that this is the case. It's purely hypothetical, right? But yes, a CrowdStrike, an organization like that, guarantee you that in their user license agreements and all that, you've got your hold harmless, right? It absolutely has to exist. But under certain circumstances, gross negligence is still gross negligence.
Sure.
So when this whole thing shakes out, let's see how this really happened, right? Because one of the questions does become, really? They pushed one update? Like everybody in the world got the same package all at the same time?
They claim not all of their customers got it, but 8.5 million machines would say a lot of them did. And
A
by the
lot
way,
of it.
like what is the we all get Patch Tuesday questions all the time, right? Like, hey, do you test this before it comes out, or you just have it on auto, right? Because we've had bad Patch Tuesdays, right, where Microsoft puts out junk, and then you're like, what just happened? My whole computer's bunk, and I got to go revert, right? Go back to like system restore and go a week ago or whatever, right? So like, for a company that big, like, why didn't they test that before it went out?
Right. You're like, what was the failsafe there? What missed to allow this to hit 8.5 million machines, right? That's the question that I think is going to be really interesting to see. And I imagine that's the question that's going to be asked in front of Congress whenever he gets there. I think it's
What
next week.
happens in Congress. They don't say anything.
Just yell at
They don't want to, yeah, they're not putting that out there. They're just gonna be like, yeah, we'll look into it. We'll get back to you. That's what it's gonna be.
Swept right under
Or at least that's historically what I've seen. Well, that brings us into you're at a new place, Ostendio, right? Want to hear a little bit about it, Paul, for people who don't like the name. The name might not be familiar, fairly new, to some, right? Tell us all about it.
So Ostendio is a channel-focused compliance and risk management solution. Got about 300 total frameworks in the platform right now. So if there's a compliance standard that you're trying to chase, most likely it's in the Ostendio platform, including like, for example, you talk about going to Australia a lot. There's a lot of different compliance standards that are operating down there, from the Essential 8 to a bunch of others that are going to be enforced. We have all of those through a crosswalking mechanism within the platform. What's a little different about Ostendio, a couple of things. One is we also have a full professional services, and call it like cybersecurity consulting service, if you will, for our partners. So a lot of MSPs struggle with compliance because the subject matter is complicated. All of the answers aren't necessarily cybersecurity, right? So a portion of compliance is around cybersecurity, but if you look at it, the governance and control function of it gets a little bit in the weeds for some partners. And the other side of it is it's a big project. So a lot of times partners run into a client that has ignored them forever on all their cybersecurity needs, but suddenly got a letter from their upstream customer that says, hey, if you don't do this by this date, I'm going to stop sending you business. Well, suddenly this is a major priority for that customer. And the MSP is told, hey, I need to get this done at any cost by like this date. And I've been telling you for months, I've got somebody else's project going. I've got whatever. Ostendio, we actually have the ability to reach in through white label, right? So you don't have to show the brand or any of that, but we can bring in security consultants. We even have auditors we can bring in and actually, build out your system security plan. We'll do a risk assessment with you if you want. Or one of the biggest things partners use that for is to bring it in and say, hey, I did a risk assessment. What does this mean and what am I supposed to put in place? And Ostendio can help with that. So we like to take the, look, we'll help you track it, we'll help you build it, but we do take the approach that we don't expect everyone can just do this. I mean, I've been in the compliance world for a long time at this point, and one of the things I think that I've come to realize is for everyone out there, the MSP can get it completely. They can totally understand the problem. But a lot of times it's a pure matter of resources, right? You just don't have the ability to throw all your resources at such a complex issue all at once. And we try to help.
That's a lot of frameworks, Paul.
Dude, I can't begin to tell you what 300 frameworks would be. The ones that matter over here, about 6 or 8 of them, you know. So, of course, we're actually releasing an updated CMMC with Spurs scoring here in the next week. We've got your HIPAA, of course, you know, FTC safeguards is one that we're building out a unique framework for. But the other 300, it's funny because the framing we use in the background, we can map to just about anything extremely rapidly. And then, you know, you can actually see how our mapping lines up with the framework question.
I thought tracking sales tax changes across 50 states is hard. 300 compliances, and like stuff changes all the time. I mean, just
Well, and
keeping up with it's got to be difficult.
well, this is the problem I think you and I've talked about a lot before in the United States specifically. In Europe, I think ISO 27001, everybody thinks about GDPR when you say Europe, but I think ISO 27001 is really one of the core compliance standards maintained overseas. Here, we've got a few of them. SOC 2, you could argue, is in a way a unified standard, but the problem is we don't have one. We don't have a federal standard. We don't have the government all coming together at once and saying, if you're in a business handling PII, you must blank, right? We don't have that. And in its absence, then you have all these different industries, states, cities, municipalities, even everybody's starting to build out their own cybersecurity standard, compliance frameworks, privacy standards. And that's happening on a global scale because frankly, none of us agree on everything, right? Like what is the one framework to rule them all? We don't have it.
Yeah, and if you're a generalist MSP that services multiple end customers across the board, while you're probably not visible right now, depending on your size, at some point that just compounds down the line because if these industries start getting, one by one, like a domino falling, you could, within a couple of years, let's say it all hits, it may force your hand on who you do business with.
Well, if you take CMMC, for example, it's one of the first of these that's making abundantly clear that they expect the vendors involved in the supply chain to adhere to this themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's very few out there that would argue that an MSP that is supporting a client that's going through CMMC tier 2, for example, is not themselves going to have to achieve compliance with the CMMC tier 2. I think that's going to start to continue across most, if not all, of these frameworks and standards. You're going to start to see it push downstream more deliberately. Like even HIPAA, for example, it doesn't clearly state you must be fully HIPAA compliant if you're a vendor in the space. You must adhere to the security rule and those standards, but there are certain things out there that you don't have to do exactly the same way as a doctor. Those rules wouldn't really apply to what you're doing, right? I think what we will see is some of these other framework standards, FTC, for example, is one that can apply to anybody. I mean, it would be very easy to say that anyone involved in credit card transactions at some point is supposed to be PCI compliant, but now you're involved in financial transactions, so you must be FTC. I mean, I've seen an example where a plastic surgeon needs to be FTC compliant because they're actually helping people finance optional and elective surgeries, right? So FTC compliance applies to the auto industry, right? And everybody immediately is like, yeah, the FTC safeguards all about car dealerships. No, it's about anybody involved in financing, including the finders who line up financing. So in the right circumstances, depending on what you do, when you have 5,000 client records, this can apply to you too. That's what we're going to see.
Funny enough, and you almost forget about it because CrowdStrike is like all the rage, but like less than a month ago, we had basically one of the top, it's almost like the MSP industry, right? You have like big K, big C, big N, right? And like, imagine one of them, getting hit all in one shot and then it goes downstream, right? So like one of the big three in the auto industry, CDK, they were down for almost 3 weeks. Are you talking about something like 15,000, I think? car dealerships, auto dealerships, whatever. Like, and you know, like, remember, there's businesses within a business within a business, right? Like, the auto dealership is also a service department, is also a parts company, and like all of a sudden, like, it creates an even bigger problem. So like, interestingly enough, that all happened, and like, it's almost like, every car dealership has probably your social security number, and like your, like, think about PII, right? Like, what do they have to do for you to process the transaction of buying a car, right? There's title information and state, local, federal, like VIN numbers. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
One of the problems is, as Americans, we don't actually value our personal data as much as we should. I don't know why that is. There's a cultural issue with us that we're willing to give out information at a much larger level than I think some other societies, for example. Americans tend to overshare on social media. I don't think that's any secret, right? Americans will share just about anything about their lives in social media, but it's also, you're really fast to fill out a form and it says, put your social security number here and put your driver's license number here. And you're just like, oh, yep, no problem. Let me go ahead and fill this thing out for you real quick. People will shop for cars and will stay on the auto dealer. They'll fill out a form at 6 different auto dealers while they're shopping for cars. And you gave all of these people your information. And what, you just assume they're doing the right thing with that stuff on the back end? That's why these compliance standards and these security standards are so important to get into place, because the truth is we are oversharing on a daily basis. It's like protecting you from yourself.
Well, let's not go too far since we started off on travel. Like, how many times do you put your passport into something? Passport number.
Oh man, right? I mean, it's, well, and I travel enough that I have lost a wallet and a phone at the same time while I was on a trip. So I have like a backup that's back in my room all the time. It's my passport card. So if something happens, I can get wherever I'm going, but I don't I don't keep that as safe as you think I would, right? Like I don't treat it in my mind like the rest of my wallet. It's my backup ID. What do you mean it's your backup ID? It's like it's another form of proving who you are. And now we're giving our face away, right? So when you show up at the Detroit, I don't know if last time you flew through the Detroit airport, but they've got facial recognition going at the Detroit airport now, to where you're supposed to be able to like see on a screen your travel information when you look, and I'll see mine. But they're capturing your face in the beginning in order to do that stuff. And that's going to expand. But everybody just walks past and goes, yes. There's an opt out button right there. You can opt out.
You gotta start wearing. You gotta
out.
start wearing a mask, Paul.
Oh yeah, go back to the mask days. Get the glow.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And like, by the way, Europe's a little bit more hardcore about the privacy part, and we've heard inklings of like California and other people starting to kind of maybe going down that road. But yeah, I mean, like, we're in a different day and age. We're going to give up a lot of information almost instantly, and you don't even blink twice. Unfortunately, when the bad guys get access to stuff, like, not to get, I'm switching industries again. How about Ticketmaster? It was like 135 terabytes of data, and like, I like, one of the first articles I wrote for all your Taylor Swift fans out there was like, oh well, every barcode for every Taylor Swift concert ticket is out, and they're like, what? And they're like, oh, but Ticketmaster's resetting them so that you can't just show up. I was like, oh, okay. Could you imagine?
Wow. Whoever has the barcode first.
Could you imagine? Like, did you hear like when the soccer finals were happening and like they're in the Miami stadium and like they just bum rushed the door and like the stadium was full, but like all these people who had tickets couldn't get it. Like, imagine that at a Taylor Swift concert.
Swifties tearing each other apart.
I mean,
I'd be a riot. It would not be good.
I mean, so at the end of the day, like, what was the other one that got hit? It was Ticketmaster, and then there was also there were like 2 or 3 big companies using, what was it? Snowflake was the back end vendor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I was like, I use them, and I use them too. I was like, guess I'm gonna get a whole lot of free credit monitoring for a year.
Yeah, right. Now all of us have, I mean, if you didn't already, right? God knows when my life, what's it called? LifeLock. My LifeLock subscription's got to be good for the next 10 years. It's been issued by so many vendors at this point, right? Like, can you
I mean, so like, they're like, hey, we're not going to prevent your identity from getting stolen, but we'll help you restore it once it is. Like, that's basically what they're saying.
Once it's out there, we'll do what we can to, help. But I slow down the ease of use. I don't know what the the purpose of that is at a certain point. It's kind of like it's kind of like dark web scanning, right? Like dark web scanning is helpful to an extent, but I
Sure.
mean it's already out there. It's already out there. So by the time you see it, it's been out there.
Yeah, 100%. And so like at the end of the day, like the bad guys of old have definitely, gotten smarter and savvier, and if anything, they've kind of grown with everybody else on the other side of the aisle, right? Like, like the people who are trying to keep all your stuff running, like we've been trying to get better over time. So have the guys on the other side, right? So,
Well, and it's a very similar industry, right? And in some cases, sadly, some of the people that are on this side of the table are on that side of the table too. And that's one of the biggest problems. I know you've seen these as well. When you look at the ads in the dark web and you see people that are advertising, I want you to go get a job here. That's the world that we're starting to move into, right? The corporate espionage world starts to grow deeper and deeper and darker. We're moving into the world, like, I don't know if you read William Gibson when you were young, but William Gibson, right? Most people are familiar. There was a movie called Johnny Mnemonic back in the day. That's one of his short stories, but he's arguably the person that coined the term like cyberspace. Super, super, super early stuff in the 80s. But Gibson viewed a world very close to the time frame that we're in right now, where corporate espionage becomes everywhere from hacking to actually like corporate militias operating independently of each other, and like corporate warfare. Dude, we're not that far off. You give this another 10 or 15 years, and I mean, it's not unheard of for
well,
somebody to
I'm again jumping again, but so I'm watching Mayor of Kingstown. It's on Paramount Plus.
Oh yeah, sure, sure,
Has
sure.
Jeremy Renner in it
Jeremy
as the
Renner,
main
yeah.
character. And so, like, when you're the drug dealer and you send your guy to be as a prison guard,
Yep.
right? Like, he's your guy. He's in your organization, but he's a prison. Like, you got him to get hired as a prison guard so that he could, he has access, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the movie The Departed, same thing, same
Yeah,
concept, right? I groomed you to be this person that's on the inside over here. I need you to go get a job at Google. I need you to get a job at Microsoft. And background checks only go so far. If you've never been caught, you've never gotten in trouble for anything, there's no reason to believe that's who you are.
it's
And
crazy.
that absolutely is happening. Absolutely is
Wow,
happening.
wow, that's actually scary. We're getting next level.
When you start, most people don't understand that stuff. I mean, I think you and I were at the same, and I've seen this a few places where people take the ads that are on the dark web and show them to just average people and like, understand, you can go get a job as a ransomware engineer right now, full benefits, 401k, KPI based performance reviews. I mean, it's a full corporate job with structure, and you're the bad guy. That's the part that people don't understand and not seeing yet.
It's a business.
It's a business. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. What was the movie I just saw on the plane 2 weeks ago with Jason Statham? Basically, it's like a
Beekeeper.
scam center that's
The bee,
PE backed. Bumblebee
the
or the
beekeeper.
Beekeeper? There it is. Go watch the Beekeeper. He's like, basically, it's like a PE backed scam center where they like call you up, get you to like, click on something on your computer like Microsoft support, something like that, and then they clear your bank account.
And it's private equity backed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if I don't know where the funding comes from, but if you take a look at what's happening out there, I mean, it's very organized and very corporate and very well structured, and it pays really well.
Wow. Wow. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be I want to be a ran.
Right? I want to be a bad actor, right? Like I want to be a bad actor just like my dad.
Well, just like my dad. Okay. Now we've jumped the shark, Paul. Now we jumped the
That's
shark.
it.
So 300 frameworks. Where do people get more information about Ostendio and like what exactly your program looks like, and maybe if they want to sign up?
So, cool thing about Ostendio for MSP partners, it is a zero barrier to entry. You want to sign up, you reach out to us. You can do info@ostendio.com. Of course, I'm always predding at ostendio.com. But we have a fully free partner program. It gives you an internal license to track your own compliance. So if you're working in healthcare, you can get HIPAA compliance. You're working in factories, you can do your own CMMC. It gives you a license that you can use to go out and do sales assessments, meaning we don't charge you anything for it all. You can go do 3 risk assessments, go find somebody that's not a customer, even do that assessment, tell them what's wrong, build your package, and then sell the solution. And of course, like anything, we have a subscription model where as you track your clients' compliance and as you work them through your compliance programs, we're the thing that sits in the middle and, provides all the proof of what you've done, the evidence locker, if you will, to put all the evidence that you might use under audit. And it's the place where your client can kind of track the project along with you. So reach out to us. We'd love to have you on board. I hate Ticketmaster. I just saw Jen say that to everybody. That's I think right now that's a very unpopular company. But no, we view it as one of the biggest problems in the industry is too many products make the partner have to pay before they can get it downstream to their client and get it into the environments. We remove that barrier entry completely. So if you're curious, come check it out. It costs nothing at all. We'd love to get you guys on board.
Yep. Just trying to think. Are we going to make the next flight, Paul?
Well, mine is Thursday morning, and as of right now, I see no evidence to the contrary. So if I do not,
you know what? I'm
gonna
going to
have
set a
some very
reminder on
upset-
my phone. I'm going to send you a message and see how that flight worked out.
Yeah, 7:50 a.m. Central. So I'll let you know. And if it doesn't happen, then I'm going to have some really pissed off and upset kids. So
is your DR strategy booking another flight on another airline just in case?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I've got American. It's really expensive, but I've got a held on points.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm going to have to give up the points, which it's fine. I don't fly American anymore anyway. I've been sitting on like 100,000 points, but yeah, I plan on going one way or the other.
I was going to say, it's definitely not Spirit or Frontier, right?
Hell no. No. I will stay home. We'll stay home. I'm good.
I'll drive.
Drive to, yeah. Well, that's the thing. If I left right now, we could drive, but I have to leave right now. Like get out, walk out the door, jump in the car. I'm not driving to Phoenix, George.
I mean, that's right. You didn't do it.
No, I don't. I've passed on that already. I'm good. I wouldn't even do it in a bus. I'm damn sure not doing it behind the wheel.
Well, you didn't have to drive.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't even ride. I'm damn sure not driving.
I hope that first class with the mask was great at the time.
It was beautiful. And my air conditioning.
We recorded this session. We went all over the place. But by the way, this is what a normal conversation between me and a Paul Redding look like. Whether it's on a bus, in a bar, on a plane, we're all over the map. But a lot of movie references and a lot of travel talk. Of course, mine comes with security stops, but
that's true.
We didn't have enough time to do that.
That's right.
This session was recorded. You'll find it on mspinitiative.com under sessions, on YouTube, on the podcatchers. Go back, check out Ostendio, which is spelled Ostendio if you're listening.com. And I'm sure you'll find me and Paul out and about, but it sounds like Paul, you're going to be in Atlanta next week for
see you there. Yep,
for CompTIA, right? For ChannelCon. So awesome. Well, for everyone else, catch you on the next one, back to the normal schedule. Make sure to check out mspinitiative.com. We got all those events and block parties and all that cool stuff coming up. And Paul, I'm sure we'll talk to you on Thursday.
Good to see you, brother.
All right, brother. See ya.